Okay, I'm going to make an argument that on the surface will sound pretty stupid, but I'm going to make another argument behind that will hopefully make more sense. Okay, so here's the first argument. If the body armor in this game would be realistic, then the Americans would have no real protection against rifle fire in this game, because the body armor they have is the PASGT West, and that's just the fragmentation West. And the game should realistically simulate that. Now, some might say, okay, that's unfair. Why would the Americans run around with no ballistic protection, while the Soviet army has two different vests with titanium plates in it? Now, I think it should be like that, because the game should be uncompromising on simulating the realism of the equipment in the game. Now, to balance that out a bit, there's two things to consider. The first one is that player skill will balance it by itself. So if the Americans know they got almost no ballistic protection, they will use more hard cover and play more carefully. And the second thing is, the game should change some variables around the medical gameplay and around the damage system that would balance that advantage a bit out while keeping it realistic. So let me explain. Currently, the way the game works is a bit like Counter-Strike. If a bullet hits body armor, it takes out a certain amount of the damage, depending on the speed of the bullet, and then the rest gets through. And I think that's unrealistic, because in real life, the bullet either gets through the body armor or it gets stuck in the body armor. And somebody who gets hit in the body armor and the bullet gets stuck, they might get some really bad bruising, but it's not as bad as the bullet getting through at any speed. And currently in the game, the way it works, if you hit an American soldier in the PASGT West at 300 meters with the AK-74, it will do about 23 damage points. And for the Soviet side, getting hit by the American rifles at that distance, it's 3 or 4 damage points lower than that. So the developers used some gamey balance to even out the body protection from both sides. And I think it's a bad idea. Now, how can we keep it realistic so it's not like that? So the first idea would be to first make the differentiation if a bullet gets through or not through. So let's say if the American soldier gets a drop on a Soviet soldier and he's close enough for the bullet to defeat the body armor protection, because it depends on the distance and speed of the bullet, that if the bullet gets through, the damage should be much higher. Basically, a torso hit, single unprotected torso hit, or anything gets into the torso through body armor, should almost be guaranteed to knock a player unconscious on the ground and require medical help. Because currently, an unarmed player getting hit in the torso without body armor takes about 40-45 damage only from an assault rifle. Now, the next thing should be is that the game should increase the damage for limb hits much more and the bleeding. And that's not entirely my idea. I got this from, I think his name is Lekkerdolt on Discord. Just had a discussion on it on the official Reforger Discord. Basically, currently a limb hit only does like 10-15 damage at 300 meters. What it should do, unless it's a grazing hit, that's different. If a limb is hit, arm or leg, it should do almost as much damage as a torso hit. And there should be an immediate bleeding that would be so bad that if the player doesn't start bandaging within 10 or 15 seconds, he would bleed out from it. Because then the player would be incentivized, if he gets hit, to immediately take action to bandage. So he's immediately taken out of the fight. And I think that's realistic, because in most video games, and in Reforger, unfortunately, players only have two states of mind. The first one is, I can fight, or I'm dead. There's nothing in between. And the game needs to have a third state where the player gets hit and fears fighting because he has to tend to the wound first. And currently the wounding system, like the game has all the variables in place for an engaging medical wounding system, but the variables are tuned down so low that medical gameplay is washed out of the game. Because if you currently get wounded, it's a concern that you may address 2 or 3 minutes after the fight. So you still fight to win the fight, and then you perhaps bandage if you feel like it. So that should be changed. So you get hit in a limb, and unless it's a grazing hit, you have to immediately bandage it, or medic has to take care of it. But the next thing should be when a player gets hit, and it would be a lethal hit, like it goes beyond the 20-25% unconscious hit, threshold. Then the game should reduce the damage, so 90% of lethal hits would be converted into unconscious hits, unless it's like a headshot or something. And that would cause players to stay in the game longer, which means they get punished for getting one bad hit, doesn't matter where, which means, let's say a Soviet soldier is behind good cover and he's shooting, and the American soldier without body armor, or without good body armor, manages to get one good leg or arm hit. Then he could still take the enemy out of the fight because he had better aim. And it only works if the limb damage and the consequential bleeding is so hard that players have to start bandaging right away. And the last thing should be about medics. So when a medic resurrects a player or heals him so he stops bleeding and he stands up again, the only way to regain hit points should be to get a Salim bag. Like there should be no more auto-regeneration. And one Salim bag should heal about 20, 25 points. And it should take like 5 minutes from one Salim bag to empty it to get 25 points. So you would probably spend 10, 15 minutes if you're near death to get to full health. Now this may seem harsh, but it adds some type of DayZ type of fear of consequences from taking a hit. And you could still be able to fight with 50% health. It's just that you're much more careful about it. And you could have situations where in a firefight, you exchange fire with enemies a lot, and you would have a lot of wounded players that are almost dead, and if they have capable medics, they would be back in combat, but much more fragile than before. And it also would give the medic an incentive to stock up on Salim bags and be near other players, and actually even playing medics, because currently medics are not really needed in the game.